morning. Today is Tuesday, April 19th at 8:30 a.m. It is my pleasure to start the Finance and Physical Resources Committee meeting this morning for Kent County. As a reminder to commissioners and participants, when you are talking, to please speak into your microphone so those listening in the live stream can hear the remarks. With that, I'm welcoming fellow commissioners, staff, guests this morning, those watching at home. Thank you so much for taking your time to come and watch the Finance and Physical Resources Committee meeting this morning. With that, I will open up to public comment. Is there any public that would like to address the Finance and Physical Resources Committee this morning? Seeing none, I will close public comment, and that will take us to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Commissioner Bolter and supported by Commissioner Womack. Questions, comments, or discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 3 from the Facilities Department, bid award. Al?
Yes, this actually should have been on the consent agenda, but the action requested is approval to award bids as listed on the attached. Bids were solicited for the following project items: courthouse janitorial services and J.C. Park restroom and parking lot. County purchasing policies and procedures were followed. It is recommended that the bids be awarded as outlined on the attached summary.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Green, supported by Commissioner Morgan. And we'll take any questions, comments, or discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor of passing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 4 from the Administrator's Office. Al?
Yes, action requested. Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve and appropriate $737,000 from the U.S. Department of Treasury for the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund from the Federal Coronavirus American Rescue Plan, ARPA, to the 2022 General Fund to cover additional overtime costs for the Sheriff's Department related to COVID-19 leaves. Kent County will receive $127.6 million from the U.S. Department of Treasury pursuant to H.R. 1319, American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, Section 603, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. The Treasury distributed 1/2 of the total to Kent County in 2021 and will distribute the remainder in 2022. This request will appropriate $737,000 to the Sheriff Department in the General Fund for the provision of government services, revenue loss, to cover additional overtime expenses related to COVID-19 medical leaves. The Sheriff Department had over 8,600 hours of leave due to COVID-19 from January 1 to March 23rd. COVID-19 leave shifts were required to be covered by other employees, which incurred additional overtime costs over and above the projected budget. This is an activity related to COVID-19.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Bolter, support by Commissioner Wooden, and we'll take questions, comments, and discussion. Yes, Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. Briefly, since this amount is being spent under the revenue loss category, I was just curious, is it just the fact that since this is a government service that doesn't fit under the others, and we have an amount allowed under revenue loss, it fits under that? Or did the overtime expenditures that weren't expected change the calculation of revenue loss in itself because it was a higher expense than what was anticipated?
Jeff, you're going to take that one and knock it out of the park?
I will try.
Great.
Good morning, Commissioners. If I understand your question, this would not have impacted the calculation of revenue loss, but it is included under the revenue loss category.
That's the better way of answering.
A lot shorter, too.
A lot shorter. Thank you. It's still the first cup of coffee. Thank you, Jeff.
Commissioner Bukowski, you're up to bat.
All right, I'll try to keep my baseball metaphors in response to a minimum. That being said, there's Jeff.
You didn't go far.
Yeah, this is, I assume this is not part of the $10 million that we originally appropriated of ARPA dollars, correct?
Correct.
And that it's the first quarter's barely done, and we're already expending ARPA dollars, close to $1 million. I don't know, it just seems like this is being rushed, that we have a lot of the fiscal year left, and come September, October, if we need these dollars to cover overtime, then we use them at that time. I don't know, it just seems like a lot. And then, of course, it's 8,600 hours of leave. It's $85 an hour. If it's every one of those was an overtime hour. So again, some of the math, some of the speed, I'm confused by ARPA. I know I came into executive committee halfway through the presentation. We're just starting a public comment period, or getting ready for public comment, and I don't know, yeah, it just seems rushed. I don't know why we have to do this today.
So I'll try to answer your question. So
If there is a question, go
Yeah,
ahead.
was there a question there? No. The overtime hours, we calculated the cost at an overtime rate because it was covered with an overtime shift, and the sheriff can extrapolate on that with more information if you'd like. As far as rushing it, it is early in the budget year, I understand. Their overtime budget was passed this year at a lower amount, basically, than what they had originally requested to try to hold budgets in check. So when looking at the budget year to date, running the reports, we feel like this is necessary now to meet their numbers. It does seem a little rushed to me, I agree with you, but we feel like it's going to be needed to support their budget throughout the rest of the year.
All right, thanks.
Yes, Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. Recently, I had a call, unfortunately, the unemployment office, and in the messaging, it says, if you are an individual who has been overpaid, you can file for a waiver to have that overpayment. This is mind-boggling to me. In other words, we overpaid a bunch of people, you can waive it. It's disappointing to hear that as a taxpayer, but in the same realm here, when we're dealing with this big pool of money, I'm just trying to quantify whether or not, the need fits what we have coming. I mean, are we gonna get a chance to see a breakdown on the numbers to see how much overtime there was, how much that costs, and how this fits? I'm not saying anything's wrong, but I've kind of lost trust in this whole process because of what's going on nationally with all this money floating around. And I just want to make sure we're being as responsible as we can with taxpayer dollars here locally, if that makes sense.
Al, you want to take a swing at that one? Or let Jeff?
No, I didn't. I thought someone wanted to talk, so I was gonna let you know.
Okay.
And this would go not just for this particular topic, but all this money that's still out there, we're gonna be spending over the next.
So we will provide the quarterly update reports with year-to-date numbers on it, so we can review it certainly at that time. That's a check on that we provide to you guys 3 times a year, and then, of course, the final financial overview update as well. So I'm not sure if that would meet your needs, or.
Well, I don't know.
Question?
It just seems like the target's moving on how money can be spent, where it has to go, and it's just, we've never been through anything like this. So it's kind of bizarre to me that there's so much money and they're overspending, acknowledging we overspent, and I don't know if there's much follow-up on that stuff.
Yeah, the unemployment question is a whole,
Yeah.
is a whole another thing. I know a little bit about that. A lot of these people, I don't know if you want me to speak on that, but a lot of these people were eligible under the initial rules. They filed, they did everything appropriately, and then the federal government pulled back the rules and said you weren't eligible. So they tried to claw back a lot of that money. So it's a little more complicated than just that you were overpaid, but.
Yeah, I'm sure it's pretty convoluted. Thank you.
But Commissioner Antor, I think you've opened up the point that we just covered at executive. So why don't I have Al bring up a quick summary of that piece?
Yes, you did approve hiring Guidehouse to be our consultant with the ARPA dollars. If you'll recall, they represent the U.S. Department of Treasury in giving the money out, and also the state of Michigan in accepting it and giving it out, Wayne and Oakland counties and Kent County and many others, many other organizations across the nation and in our state. Basically, what we did this morning with exec is we went over a framework that we would like to make part of the public input process that's required, and a schedule and a draft plan for communication. We will be communicating that with the entire board, but executive did have the first cut at that this morning. And so already I can see the benefit of having Guidehouse. They've done this with so many other places that they're really expert on what's allowable, what isn't allowable, and making sure we know that. So I do think that we have a good partner there.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Al. Appreciate the explanation.
Commissioner Bolter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, this will be, I assume, different than CARES, but when we did CARES, we had a 6-month finite amount of time, and then that's why legal was ready to pull their hair out, because they were doing legal agreements with every recipient that was receiving those funds, correct? So that was kind of our check and balance at the county, that we made sure that those folks that were receiving those funds were legally bound to spend them the way they were supposed to be spent. I don't know if we have that in place for this process, but I think the county probably did learn a lot about making sure that we are really minding that those, where those funds are going, and that they're under an allowable use and there is a need, and just wanted to speak to that, because that was part of the huge challenge for staff and outside counsel, was getting all those legal agreements together as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Good point. And I would also just say that ARPA will be a little different because of needing to make transformational investments. So it'll be in bigger buckets overall. There's that core part of county operations that are impacted due to COVID. And that's where this comes from, this overtime. We know that's going to be an expense this year. The sheriff can accurately predict that. So while it does seem like it's rushed, we know it's an expense that's going to happen, so we're just trying to clear the deck on that one. So I think that it's 127.6 million. My guess is we'll get many times that in requests ultimately, but the filter will be to do bigger transformational type things. And so I think that while it's going to be a challenge, at least from what I can tell the county went through with the CARES Act process, I think it will be easier in the sense that there will be a smaller number of grants as opposed to the massive number that you did under CARES.
Commissioner Womack?
Yes, two questions for either Jeff or our sheriff. The $737,000, does it create a deficit in the sheriff's budget? And as it does, how does it adversely affect the budget and services coming out of the sheriff's department for the populace?
Good morning,
everybody.
Sheriff.
So our overtime budget, generally speaking, does a few things for the department. I try to run at about 5% operationally, so we don't count on people normally working overtime to support our shifts. However, special events in the community are always done out of overtime, and then there's a reimbursement process that applies. Generally speaking, training comes out of our overtime budget because it's above and beyond what we can normally plan on with the staff. And when we're short staff or we've had a lot of staffing turnover, that will generally cause overtime, because it takes about 6 months for me to get a police officer on the roster or a corrections officer on the roster where they can fill a role. So if you're hearing a theme in this, all of these things are converging on us all at once. We do have a lot of turnover in staff that's causing overtime right now. There is a significant number of special events planned in our community. Some of it's a bit of a backlog from years that we haven't been able to do it. And obviously, we've had some need to make sure there's order in the city, and that's causing overtime. So that's why Al can pretty accurately say that we are predicting overtime. We have a very significant training load planned for this year to include additional use of force training that we've now talked about several times. That's planned for this year. So I have every penny of overtime in this budget planned, and so everything above and beyond that really did make it so there was a very significant concern that it would affect our training dollars. That's why we're doing it so early in the year.
In percentile, you said you try to average it around 5%. What percentage would we be at now related with COVID-related overtime added to that percentage?
Or, I don't know the actual number, but I will look to get it for you.
Okay,
But
thank you.
those 3 months were very heavy on overtime for our department.
Thank you very much, Sheriff.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Morgan?
Just a quick comment. Having lived through the recession of 2009 and having to go through that process, it's just the irony of now we have to have a consultant help us spend our money is just hard for me to get my head around. Thanks.
Hey, Commissioner Bukowski?
Yeah, we talked about Guidehouse?
Yes.
Guidehouse. Did I miss, we approved up to $500,000 for that contract, and then I heard that in negotiations it was less. But when we approved that up to, I thought the contract was coming back to us at finance to approve. So since I saw Guidehouse this morning in the building, was that contract signed? And did I miss our
Yes.
approval?
It came in less than the amount that requires us to take it to the board.
All right, well,
I mean, I think through 2 allocations of the 10 million, we talked about bringing them on, we explained all that.
correct. And
And
at
then-
that time, the question was $500,000, or the comment I made was $500,000 sounded like a lot of money. And I thought, well, I thought for you it wouldn't be, but anyways, the quick story that it was told that, don't worry, the contract will come back to the board for approval. At least Commissioner Morgan's remembering that too. So, I mean, just from a process I'm not worried, I just want to, that.
We're a little off topic, but while we're off topic, let's just go
Well, but
ahead
it
and
is-
stay there
it's
for an
still back
extra
trying to
minute.
figure out.
Why don't we go
Yeah.
ahead and find out what is that amount
So
of that contract?
The $500,000, I don't think we ever anticipated spending $500,000 with Guidehouse, but we were aware of the legal expenses that
Yeah.
the county had. So this would include if we need to use Warner in some of those processes too.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the results or your judgment in getting the help we need to figure this out. That's not my question or concern. I just recall, and I think Commissioner Morgan's recalling the same, that when we said, wow, this is a significant contract, I remember either you or Linda saying, don't worry, it's coming back to the full board for your sign off before we sign. And so, again, no big deal if it's something we need to quick look at it or not. That's cool.
You know, I think what happened is we did not anticipate getting the contract that low. And what we did, we just kept rolling, and if we should have brought it back, then I apologize for that. But certainly, I think initially, we did not expect it to come in under what the administrators
it, Jeff?
authorized to do.
I believe, and Cal can correct me, I think it was 180,000 that we signed it for, and it was under 200, I believe, and Cal has authority up to 250,000 to approve contracts. That's why we didn't bring it back to the board. So.
All right. Thanks. Cool. Well, I'll leave it there. Cool.
All right, any other questions or comments on agenda item number 4? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That will bring us to item number 5, also from the Administrator's Office. Al?
Yes, action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to appropriate $2.3 million of previously approved funds received from the U.S. Department of Treasury for the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund from the Federal Coronavirus American Rescue Plan Act to the General Fund for transfer to the 2021-22 Health Fund and the 2022 Special Revenue Fund, and to appropriate $1 million to the 2022 Special Revenue Fund. Kent County will receive $127.6 million from the U.S. Department of Treasury pursuant to the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. The Treasury distributed one half of the total to Kent County in 2021 and will distribute the remainder in 2022. Board Resolution 01272213 approve the use of $10 million of ARPA dollars received to date for various uses. This request effectuates the January approval of revenue loss category items and transfers the funds to abide by requirements that the Treasury included in the final rule after the board's decision-making in January. The remaining $10 million allocation approved in January is not impacted by the final rule and does not require additional board action. This request will appropriate $2.3 million to the general fund for the provision of government services revenue loss to facilitate two previously approved projects. $1.3 million will be transferred from the general fund to the 2021-22 health fund for the food service licensing fee waiver, and $1 million will be transferred from the general fund and appropriated to the 2022 special revenue fund for the organizational improvement and employee well-being and development program.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wooden, supported by Commissioner Bolter. And Al, you want to make
Yeah.
a comment on this?
To sum all that, the rules changed between when the board approved it the last time and now. Some of the 10 million needs to be brought back, but not all the 10 million, so.
And that's what this does. This gets what we've already approved shored up per the new rules, per
Right,
the final rules.
correct.
And that's what we're doing. So this has already been through and approved, but we had to revisit it because of a change in the rules with how we approved it. Is that right?
Yes.
Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah.
Yeah, how many interim final rules did we have? I mean, yeah, yes, we did.
So any other questions or comments on this? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 6 from the Administrator's Office. Al?
Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve a public utility easement to Consumers Energy Company to provide necessary power services to the airport. Gerald R. Ford International Airport staff has been working with Consumers Energy to provide power services to the airport. AV Flight is constructing a new aircraft hangar at 4199 Cassard Lane, which requires electrical services from Consumers Energy. A grant of public utility easement to Consumers Energy is necessary to support an installation of a 3-phase power service to this new hangar. The airport lease and asset transfer agreement between the county and airport requires the airport to obtain the county's approval for all property dispositions, including easements which exceed 40 years. The grant of easement has been reviewed and approved as to form by the airport's attorney and the County Assistant Corporation Counsel.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Commissioner Sparks and supported by Commissioner Morgan. And we'll take questions, comments, and discussion. And we'll start with Commissioner Morgan.
Yeah, I'd just like to introduce Clint. He's part of our engineering management team. If there's any questions, I'm sure he can handle it a lot better than I can. Just a comment, I think this is the longest 6-page easement agreement. I mean,
I don't write the legal
I
descriptions.
know, just amazing to me. This is an FBO that's on the airport, one of 2, and they're doing a fine job. Anything to add, Clint? No?
Construction's underway,
Okay.
ready for power.
Commissioner Wooden?
Thank you, Chair. Just curious, because we have a number of these similar items coming before us, is there a reason why the approvals of easements can't go through a consent agenda? Given that these are pro forma and reviewed by attorney?
From a legal perspective, there's no reason they couldn't go consent. A lot of times it varies based on the amount of impact an easement will have. Some of these are pretty mild, pretty small.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure the exact process that we use to differentiate consent versus non, but we can revisit that with the administrator based on the agenda length.
Just curious, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor of passing, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 7 from the Department of Public Works. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve easements located on the South Kent landfill and authorize the board chair or designee to sign any related documents. Consumers Energy has requested the county to grant both a maintenance easement area and a protection easement area on South Kent landfill property. This easement is requested to permit Consumers Energy to maintain an open area that runs underneath electrical utility lines across the SKL. Kent County Department of Public Works staff members have reviewed the proposed easements and are satisfied that the easements will not create operational difficulties. Corporate Counsel's Office has reviewed and approved the easement as to form.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wooden and supported by Commissioner Sparks, and we'll take questions, comments, and discussion on this grant of maintenance easement. Yes, Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. Is this new infrastructure, is this for waste to energy potentially, or is this?
This is down at South Kent landfill, not at the WTE.
Oh, okay. So we don't have that yet. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Bukowski.
Yeah, it looks, according to the map, it's way far away from the potential sustainable business park and anything else. It looks again to be a housekeeping kind of thing up in the northeast corner of the property. So yeah, it seems pretty minor.
Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 8 from Facilities Management. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve an easement for Consumers Energy Company on a portion of county property used by the Parks Department and to authorize the board chair or designee to sign related documents. Consumers Energy is requesting the county provide an easement on 2 parcels of its property off Butterworth Street to accommodate a guy anchor for a utility pole. The need for the guy anchor relates to work being performed by Consumers Energy on the opposite side of Butterworth. The proposed easement has been reviewed and approved as to form by corporate counsel.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wooden and support? Support by Commissioner Sparks. We'll take questions, comments, and discussion on this one. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 9 from Corporate Counsel's Office. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve a partial release of a sewer line easement located in the city of Wyoming and authorize the board chair or designee to sign any related documents. Kent County has received a request to release an unused sewer line easement located in the city of Wyoming. The easement, along with the license to locate a sewer line underneath a railway, was granted by the Pennsylvania Railroad Company in 1964 when the Kent County Department of Public Works handled sewer line installation and maintenance. The DPW transferred easements for the Wyoming sewer system in 2012. While best efforts were used to identify all easements, this one was evidently overlooked. Corporate Counsel's office has verified with the city of Wyoming that it has no need for the easement. However, Wyoming does require the license to remain in effect as the sewer line runs underneath the railway. Corporate Counsel's office drafted the partial release of the easement.
Okay, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Commissioner Sparks and supported by Commissioner Womack. We'll take questions, comments, and discussion on this one. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor to approve, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 10 from the Drain Commission. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve the plan of the Drain Commissioner to maintain and repair the Stacy Street embankment on the south side of Five Lakes and instruct the Commissioner to take all necessary steps to maintain and repair the embankment consistent with the requirements of the Michigan Inland Lake Level Act. An inland lake level has been established for Five Lakes pursuant to the Inland Lake Level Act of the Natural Resources Environmental Protection Act. The Kent County Drain Commissioner, as a delegated authority, maintains the water control structure on Five Lakes pursuant to the requirements of the Act. There is a need for maintenance and repair of the embankment, which will cost in excess of $10,000. State law requires that an expenditure of more than $10,000 for the maintenance and repair of a lake augmentation well or water control structure receive the approval by a resolution of the Kent County Board of Commissioners. The maintenance and repair of Stacy Street embankment is necessary in order to maintain the established lake level and for the protection of the natural resources.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wooden and support? Support by Commissioner Womack. And we'll take questions, comments, and discussions. And we'll start with Commissioner Bukowski.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering in the official resolution if there's a whereas missing, like whereas who's going to pay for this? Because it just says we're giving the drain commissioner authority to spend whatever's needed. And does that mean he's coming back with a few invoices? You're like, where's the whereas?
Can we have our Drain Commissioner, Ken Yonker, approach the mic, please? Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, and Commissioner, thank you. You stood true to your form. I always expect a question from you.
Well, thank you. I hope it's relevant.
Yeah, no, these lake levels are, by court order, a district has been established when the lake level is established on these. So all the costs gets put to the property owners on the lake.
And should that not be in the whereas somewhere, or we just know that they
Well,
will? pay
yeah,
for- Like, the assessment district will bear the cost of this in total?
We just made an assumption because it's state law, the whereas wasn't needed, but we can put it in there for clarity if you so wish.
I've always appreciated that.
Sure.
So,
agreement out there.
what do we do with that, Al? Can we make an amendment to this, or what do we do?
We can either just include it, or you could actually amend the motion to ask that it be included.
Included when it goes to the full board, just the whereas goes to the.
We can do it,
Can we do that?
yes.
Everyone good with that? On the committee, or do we need anything formal? Okay, and how large is that assessment district, Ken? How many homes?
Approximately 300.
And will be billed all at one time for those homeowners?
We'll see what the final cost is. Jeff works very good with us on, we can go up to 6 years with the county. So we'll see what the cost is and what's gonna fit for everybody.
Do we have an estimate for the total cost?
Not yet.
We're awaiting geotechnical and soil borings until we have that result. We cannot know what our final solution is.
We
Ken,
have
could
to-
you repeat that? Because no one's going to be able to follow that at home without being in the
All right,
mic.
we're waiting for the outcomes of the soil testing, soil boring of that berm. We have no historical records on that berm. We don't know what it's made out of. So we have to get that understanding before we know what we have to do to stabilize that berm. And then we'll be able to get prices. But at this point, we can't stick our neck out on this one. Could be cheap, it could be expensive. But we'll work on it. We'll see what the costs come in, and we'll make sure it works for the people. They've already been notified. They know this is coming. We've been in communication with both townships. So it's just a matter of getting the final numbers, and then we'll meet again and see what we can do to make it workable for them.
Ken, which townships does this impact? Oakfield,
It's Oakfield and Spencer.
Spencer? Okay. Yes, Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. Ken, the water control structure, that's a berm,
Correct.
and so.
That end of it is, yeah.
so Problems right now are low water levels.
No, actually, the berm is seeping water through it at a pretty good rate. We don't want it blowing out. And there's a
Okay.
road on top of it.
So, but the water levels they're high.
Well, yeah, there's more complaint of the water levels being high. So we're gonna address that with this repair as well. So there's another outlet. This is a unique situation where they dammed up the south end of the lake to build the lakes and force the water to go north, but the water naturally flows south. So if anybody says it can't come to Drain Commissioner, can't make water go uphill, we're doing it with this one. But it also creates a pretty complex situation.
Gotta drop a few beavers in there, they'll
Yeah.
manage it.
Yeah.
So there's no problems upstream with?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anyone else with questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of passing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item number 11 from the Drain Commission. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve the plan of the Drain Commissioner to maintain and repair the spillway and embankment of Wabasis Lake, and instruct the Commissioner to take all necessary steps to maintain and repair the embankment consistent with the requirements of the Michigan Inland Lake Level Act. An inland lake level has been established for Wabasis Lake pursuant to the Inland Lake Level Act of the Natural Resources Environmental Protection Act. The Kent County Drain Commissioner, as the delegated authority, maintains the water control structure on Wabasis Lake pursuant to the requirements of the act. There is a need for maintenance and repair of the spillway and embankment, which will cost in excess of $10,000. State law requires an expenditure of more than $10,000 for the maintenance and repair of a lake augmentation well or water control structure. Receive the approval by resolution of the Kent County Board of Commissioners. The maintenance and repair of spillway and embankment are necessary in order to maintain the established lake level and for the protection of the natural resources.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Morgan. Is that what I heard? Commissioner Morgan, supported by Commissioner Bukowski. And we'll take questions, comments, and discussion on this one. Yes, Commissioner Bukowski.
Can I ask for a similar whereas friendly added to this as well? Since, assuming, yes, the folks of Wabasis Lake, got it. Is that good?
Yes, we will
Thank
do
you.
it.
Thank you.
Ken, why don't you come up, because I want to do that one in a little bit more detail, knowing that Wabasis is part Kent County Park. How does that impact how this is done?
Oh, you want to ask me that question again? I didn't.
So Kent County has a
Yep.
park, Wabasis Campground, right there. So when this is done, how does that play into this, or
that
does
one
the
of-
park not pay for this improvement?
We'll have to check the roll. I believe the park is on the roll, but we can check.
Yeah, if there's a public access on
There
the
is?
lake, all right, yeah, there is. I've
There
been
is,
there, yeah.
because
So
I've
then
been
the
there
county,
myself.
county then has a parcel, has their part of the assessment that they'll have to pay on this. They're not exempt, but that usually falls on
We'll
me,
make sure
so.
that's in there too.
Okay, we'll put that in there too, Al.
Yes.
And how many homeowners there?
100, we're in the range of 200.
200 plus the park. And again, same concept with working with Jeff, that if it needs to be a longer
Correct.
time frame and
Correct.
payments, it can be done. You said up to 6 years?
Correct.
Yes, Commissioner Antor.
Thank you. Does the Michigan Department of Natural Resources have any skin in this game at all?
No.
They have not. And when was the last time we had to do something like this, do you know, as far as that type of work?
On this dam, we haven't. Since we've had that major failure, we're under a little more scrutiny and we have to look for different things. And what we have here is there's a steel wall that goes on both sides of the concrete structure. And that, so when water gets high, it'll hold it so it all funnels over the dam and not around the embankments. But that wall is short, all right? So if the water goes high to the top of those steel walls, it's gonna go around, if it gets higher, it's gonna go around. Because the dam's only gonna allow so much over the weir. And if it starts going around, then we have a problem, it can wash out both embankments, and then we got a real mess. So we gotta extend that wall, put more fill, build that bankment up a little higher to protect it.
You work with Eagle on this too, or?
Yeah, we have to do inspection on these every 5 years. And Joe Morgan, our engineer, he did a pretty thorough investigation on this one this year and brought it to Eagle's attention, and they wanted this thing addressed ASAP.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Green? I'm good, okay. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item 12. The Bureau of Equalization is going to come chat.
Action requested. Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to adopt the 2022 Equalization Report. The Bureau of Equalization has completed its review of the 2022 assessment rolls of the 21 townships and 9 cities of Kent County. The Bureau of Equalization recommends adoption of the State Equalized Value, SEV, of the real and personal property in the total combined amount of $37,305,105,935. This is an increase of 9.42% over the 2021 SEV of $34,093,610,850. The state taxable value, STV, of the real and personal property is $28,418,785,125, an increase of 7.01% over the 2021 STV of $26,557,114,520. The equalized values have been prepared in accordance with MCL 21134 as amended and in time to be submitted to the State Tax Commission by the required deadline of May 2, 2022.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve? Support. Moved by Commissioner Morgan, supported by Commissioner Bukowski, and I believe we have some comments from our equalization head, Matt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a few brief overview comments and be happy to answer any questions you may have. Just as a brief reminder, there's two key reports that the Board of Commissioners is responsible for each year. And as your representatives, the Equalization Department compiles, in the first instance, the equalization report, which is what is being presented to you today. And then in the second instance, the apportionment report, which is about the villages. So the equalization report, as is mentioned in the last bullet line item there, is compiled under 21134, and your official action at the full board meeting is what makes all of the assessments and taxable values lawful for the coming year. It's my privilege to present these to you each year. I represent a staff of 14 professional appraisers and mappers, and we're happy to present this to you again on this annual basis. So the growth in value this year has been extraordinary. The assessed value has gone up $3.2 billion in state equalized value. That's kind of like the equivalent of adding the value of the city of Kentwood, the city of Lowell, and the city of Rockford all together in terms of assessed value. So it's substantial growth. We all are aware every day of the dynamics in the housing market. The West Michigan economy continues to be a very strong center of attraction, and it shows up across really all classes of property. On the taxable value side, of course, the taxable value side is constrained by the growth parameters of Proposal A. And so the Proposal A CPI inflation rate for this year was 3.3%. So the constraint there is that grew only the 7.01% as opposed to the 9.42%. So one of the things that we often are asked is what percentage of the growth that we have is due to market forces in the taxable value, and what percentage is due to the percentage new. Of the 9.42%, 7% is due to the market, and about 1.7 is due to the percentage in the new value. So about 2% of that overall growth is attributed to new construction. The rest of it is adjustment, and of course the adjustment in the market is what becomes subject to the Headley millage reduction fractions. So while we are going up the percentage in taxable value, the county board also will need to be mindful, and this will come into play certainly in the apportionment, but with the Somervilles, is that there will be Headley rollbacks this year. Because the CPI is only 3.3 and the taxable value grew 7%, that difference there is now going to result in a significant Headley millage reduction fraction calculation. So keeping in mind that the value is still growing, and it is growing that 7%, but to the extent that the percentage of the market that's being captured, it will be rolled back. So I always try to defer on the revenue side to fiscal services, but just in terms of real money, if we were to see somewhere between an $8 million natural growth in revenues, that will be curtailed by almost $2 million. So it's still $6 million in revenue growth, but otherwise it would be in the realm of $8 million. So it is significant, and the two aspects of property tax administration limitations are fully at play. The Proposal A limits your growth in taxable value, Handley Amendment limits your growth in the overall rate to the rate of inflation with the millage rate. So with that, I guess, brief overview, there's another question that I get is what percent is attributable to the uncappings, like properties that have sold? And last year in 2021, we had 15,567 transfers attributable to $2.2 billion worth of taxable value, roughly 8% of the overall tax base turned over. And so therefore, about 8% of the properties are not capped, but therefore will be uncapped and will absorb more of the 9.42 as opposed to the 7.1% growth. We also, Commissioner Bolkowski, have updated the per capita graph for you in the materials that we presented, and I know that's one of your questions. And with that, I think that highlights most of the points that I've heard in the past. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you may have, and anything we can't answer today, we can follow up with.
Great, we'll start with Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Matt.
Morning.
Since I've been here, which is almost 14 years now, 9.42%, that seems like it's unprecedented. Historically, where are we at with that number? Is that one of the
The
best
highest percentage increase since 1988.
since '88? It's amazing. Kind of explains why the roads are so clogged up all the time when I'm driving around Grand Rapids. And most of that growth, it was down south and southwest, I think, at one point. Can you earmark any new hot areas, or is it kind of all over?
The whole area is growing just in general, and that's really a function of our local economy. And the biggest issue that we have in the rising appreciation is just the imbalance between the supply and demand.
Yeah.
It's just very difficult to build homes fast enough, and so the existing housing stock is increasing at those historic levels.
Along with the cost of materials to build.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, Matt, appreciated the sidebar this morning and your review of the Headley. I always have to bring that back in my memory as far as how that's calculated, so I appreciate that. We had a 9%. Did I catch how much was commercial and industrial? I mean, I know there's a lot of residential in this, but there was growth too in the commercial and
Yeah,
industrial
so
side.
the commercial class as a whole comprises about 22% of our overall value. Commercial grew 11.4% this year. Agricultural land went up 16% this year. Industrial went up 13%, and residential went up almost 9%.
Thanks.
Commissioner Bolkowski?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, definitely, thank you, Matt, for you and your staff's work on this. Yeah, because it's definitely a lot of numbers, cross-referenced and all that. You already pointed it out, but I do want to thank you for continuing to add that per capita, because it does show, again, if you had 1 mil assessed in, if you look at that chart in a Cascade or Ada or East Grand Rapids, you know, it's, well, some are 3 times more than 1 mil in the city of Grand Rapids, the impact per citizenry. So it, you know, when we have imbalances on local taxation, it's, you know, because when we start talking about the taxable value gets reduced, but we're still going to see an increase in net revenue, even though it's not as much as it could have been. Same with Headley, is we're still going to see a net increase, but we talk about the rollback and what we lost. And so it's just, you know, it's, yeah, no real question other than your continued great work. I mean, the questions and concern for us as when we look at taxation across the county, where's the equity or not? So, but this is the real numbers, and thank you for that awesome hard work to present the facts.
Thank you.
Hey, anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of passing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item 13 from Fiscal Services. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to transfer $675,000 in the 2022 Capital Improvement Project Fund from the Strategic Capital Projects to the Fleet Services CIP project. On January 23, 2020, the Board of Commissioners created a Fleet Services Replacement Project in the 2020 CIP Fund via Resolution 12329 with an appropriation of $3.5 million from the Strategic Capital Project in the CIP Fund. This project will provide the necessary infrastructure, including utilities and site work, and building construction for the replacement of the county's fleet services facility at the Fuller campus. The architectural and engineering planning for the project is complete, and bids for the project have recently been received. After bidding, the total project cost is approximately 19%, or $675,000, over the originally estimated project budget. The actual costs are related to additional project scope, and primarily 2 additional service bays and heavy lift equipment, the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on the economy, and increased costs of construction projects due to supply chain disruption, inflation, and shortage of skilled trade workers, and higher labor costs over the past 2+ years. It is recommended that an additional $675,000 be transferred from the Strategic Capital Projects to the Fleet Services Replacement Project in the CIP Fund. The Strategic Capital CIP Project was established in 2015 to set aside funding for future capital needs and to reduce the size of debt associated with large capital projects. Any use of the strategic capital funding must be appropriated by the board for a specific project before it can be spent.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Commissioner Morgan and support by Commissioner Bokowski. We'll take questions, comments, and discussion, and we'll start with Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. I was trying to recall this as I was reviewing the packet. Have we had other requests for additional funds for the other projects that we approved through strategic capital for increases?
Yes.
And do we expect any further, or is this the final one?
It's the final as far as we know, yes.
That's always
Well,
a
I
good,
mean-
that's always a good qualifier. That's okay.
I mean, we're still building the north campus, and we don't know what's going to happen with steel and other things, so, but as far as we know today, yes.
Fantastic. Thank
At
you.
the same time, it could come again for the North Campus.
Al doesn't think so, but
Come on up, Al. The other Al.
Thank you. For the North County campus, we've already opened our bids for that, and the prices are locked in. But to Al's point, something unforeseen could come up, but again, the general contractor, OAK, O'Names and Kimball, is obligated to provide us what is in our construction documents. Something different could come up, some emergent need, but we're not, nothing we could possibly anticipate at this time.
Hang on, I've got Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. On the 19% that we were under, I get all the costs except for the shortage of skilled trade workers. I guess, how do we quantify?
Well, that just raises the price of things. That's kind of embedded in some of the
Supply
other
and demand
costs.
type of thing?
Yeah, yes.
And that is a huge problem everywhere we look, is we
Yeah,
running out of
and then I'm not knocking the skilled trades at all, because we work well with them. And I am old enough to understand that we teach future generations. Right now, there's the next generation doing a lot of learning on some of this stuff, because many others have retired. And yes, it's a shortage of skilled trades, as anyone knows, even residential, if you're trying to do for either your business or residential, there is certainly plumbers, electricians, roofers.
It's a
All our work is
nightmare right
Premium.
now. You can go ahead and say it, and it's gonna get worse unless, I don't know if we have to incentivize that more or whatever, but it's really, you talk about supply chain and everything else.
It usually takes a while. When we went through the Great Recession and construction took a dive, we lost a lot of people, drywallers, for instance, and it takes a while to build that back up. It's building back up. It just takes a while.
Thank you, Al.
Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, Al, this has been on the drawing board a long time, this facility, just to let my colleagues know, and just maintaining your fleet is so important. So I'm glad to see finally, I think this has been on the drawing board for a long, long time, and it's just nice to see the project move ahead.
A reminder to your point on that, Commissioner Morgan, this was a fully funded project until the Great Recession, and then it was pulled back, I think wisely so, because we didn't, there was a lot of uncertainty at the time, but it was a fully funded project, 2009.
I didn't want to date myself, Al, but it was been on the board a while.
Commissioner Bulkowski?
Thank you, Chair. Of that 675,000, approximately, how much is increased scope and how much is increased,
Those increased bays was about $400,000,
Okay.
but needed because.
Oh, no,
yeah.
no, that was not the question.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I mean, again, I totally trust you and staff are bringing great
Very
recommendation.
kind of you, thank you.
Yeah, my concern is if anybody were to cover this story as like 19% increase because of, and then we'll blame somebody in office when actually 400,000 is increased scope. And there is a percentage because of increased costs, but it's not 19%. So as to blame somebody else. It was a good decision by you and staff to increase the scope. That's my concern. Not concern, it's just clarification. Yeah, I'll just leave it there. So, thank you.
So Al, we already have our project going. This is additional cost for that, and it's making it bigger? Is that?
No, this project has not commenced yet. It won't even start for a few more months yet.
Okay, this one has nothing to do with the one we passed.
For the other one that we did was for North County.
No, I'm talking about the fleet service. We did a
This is
fleet,
fleet.
we did a garage expansion.
This is fleet.
Right, this is a different building than the garage one? Or is it the same building?
Say garage, I'm sorry.
We had some improvements when we passed the getting North Kent done and the parks, and we had one for fleet.
This is it.
This is your original.
The original was 3.5. So, but we're adding the 675.
Yeah, hopefully.
Got it. Just making sure, but we already have this money ready to go. We don't have to bond, right?
Right.
It's my understanding, yes.
Great. Anyone else?
Very proud of that.
All right, seeing nothing else, all those in favor of passing, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item 14 from Kent County Community Action. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to accept and appropriate an additional $263,542 from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services for the Weatherization Assistance Program, Low Income Heating Energy Assistance Program to the 2021-22 Kent County Community Action Fund, and contingent upon execution of an amended contract, authorize the board chair or designee to execute the amended grant agreement, approve extensions, amendments, and increases to the grant appropriation not to exceed 15% of the award. Kent County Community Action has received notification from MDHHS that an additional $263,542 in WAP LIHEAP funds are available for Kent County. These funds will be utilized for labor and materials and health and safety measures installed in customers' dwellings, as well as administrative and supportive expenses. Board Resolution 09-09-21-85 appropriated $264,345 in federal funding for the WAP LIHEAP 2021-22 program budget and $20,483 in general fund transfers in. The contract with MDHHS is increasing grant funding from $264,345 to $527,887, which requires an additional grant appropriation of $263,542. The total amended budget will be $548,370. The Kent County Community Action has weatherized over 260 dwellings while administrating the WAP LIHEAP program in Kent County, and expects to complete a total of 40 units and dwellings with this funding. The grant term is October 1, 2021 through September 30, 2022. Corporate Counsel will review and approve the amended agreement as to form.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Wooden, supported by Commissioner Bukowski, and we'll take questions, comments, and discussions. Yes, Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. I had two questions for staff on this. This increase, I'm assuming it is the same original source of funds. As I understand, WAP starts at the feds, goes through DHHS, and then goes to KCCA. This increase represents the same original source of funds, so it has the same reporting requirements and compliance requirements.
Come on up, Jenny.
That's correct, Commissioner.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, just because I've received a number of constituent concerns around this, I know other commissioners have too, that there have been recently concerns around delays in original application to the actual deployment of funds. And I do believe some actions have been taken to rectify that, and there are some that are just beyond our control. Could you provide a little more detail for the committee for that?
Yes, I've been working with KCCA on some process mapping and improvement and also analysis of our staffing levels at this time for weatherization. We continue to receive additional funds for this important service in our community, and there's quite a lot of demand. But we are working to make the response to inquiries, the application process, and then the energy audit and startup of the actual improvements on the homes a more efficient process to better serve our customers.
And what are some of the obstacles that you all may face that even if you improve, even through the process mapping, you find efficiencies? What are some of the variables that just frankly you can't control, or we have less control over?
Part of that is as Al Jano had mentioned, there are certifications required to do energy audits and inspections, and there are fewer contractors available to do some of the work in the homes at this time for the same reasons that the committee discussed earlier. So we've been doing some outreach with GRCC to educate students about opportunities to get involved in work around weatherization, and also partnering with a local community group. I think it's Building Bridges, that has crews that are being invited to get involved in weatherization work. Also, KCCA has had some inquiries from local contractors about being interested in this type of work, so they're preparing a presentation for those contractors to educate them about the certifications that are required and the type of work, and support them in getting from interest to doing weatherization in our community.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Bukowski, don't go anywhere, Jenny.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The concern, so yeah, I definitely understand and appreciate, the cost of getting the work done and finding somebody who knows how to do the work. Some of the concerns I had from constituents were on our end, our being KCCA and the county, related to basic customer service and not getting phone calls returned. And again, if people are either told, yep, you're eligible and the wait's going to be 2 years, or again, is that part of the process mapping? And are some of those issues are they truthful? And if so, when are resolutions on things we can control?
Part of the backlog was in the very first step of returning phone calls and getting the pre-application process started. That was partly due to having a staff person who was on long-term medical leave, and so staff were stretched too thin, and we ended up with a very long waiting list of phone calls to return. We are back staffed up in that clerk position, and we have dedicated one of them to full-time returning calls to weatherization inquiries, and we have gotten that wait list or list of unreturned calls down to there's no longer a wait list. So that was the first step. The area of expertise and energy audit, that's another place where we have sometimes a couple 6 weeks to a couple months delay in getting the energy audits done because we don't have quite enough people with the certification. We have a staff member who's close to having the certification approved, and that will help, but we're needing to increase that capacity within the team.
Anyone else? Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if in the future, would it be possible to have a map of Kent County with dots on it, everywhere that we've done our work, so we can kind of get an idea of areas that maybe aren't getting the information potentially, or so we can get a feel for where this money's being spent?
That's a good idea. We hadn't talked about that, but that would be illustrative of how we're serving the community. So yeah, I'll talk to the team about that.
Following up on that, as far as getting information out to each township regarding this program, I know in the past when it comes across my mind, I'll tell you, is applications are, you can file for this. I'm not sure how far that goes up the food chain, but how do you guys normally publicize this money?
Through the administrator's office, we've used the digest, Alice Digest, which goes to all the local units, and also our quadrant meetings. I would have to get more information about other KCCA-specific outreach. I don't have that on hand.
Yeah, if you could look into that map, that'd be kind of helpful to visualize it a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. That brings us to item 15, also from Kent County Community Action.
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to accept and appropriate $55,450 from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services as part of the Weatherization Deferral Reduction Program grant as part of the Department of Energy Weatherization Assistance Program to the 2021-2022 Kent County Community Action Fund, to authorize the board chair or designee to execute the documents related to the funds and approve extensions, amendments, and increases to the grant appropriation not to exceed 15% of the original award. Kent County Community Action has received notification of its pending allocation for the Weatherization Deferral Reduction Program grant, WXDEF. This program addresses the health and safety issues that prevent completion of weatherization services on residential single-family and multifamily homes. Funds will be used for construction, reconstruction, improvement, or repairs to correct health and safety conditions that require a deferral from participation in energy efficiency and weatherization programs for households with low income. Improvements and repairs may include, but are not limited to, mold remediation, outdated wiring, roof repair or replacement, and minor plumbing repair. This pilot program is funded from the State of Michigan fiscal year 2022 budget. It is a 9-month program and operates from 1/1/22 to 9/30/2022. Assistant Corporate Counsel will review and approve all documents as to form prior to signature.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Bukowski, supported by Commissioner Wooden. We'll take questions, comments, and discussion on this as well. Yes, Commissioner Bolter.
Thank you, Chair Jones. To Commissioner Antor's point, I would really be interested in seeing that map because I know some areas of my district are considered not low income, but some areas are, and it just kind of goes to potentially a communications issue. And to your point earlier, I meant to make on item 14, if we do have low-income people who are waiting for heating assistance and we've got a staff person who's been gone, it seems like we could have team members kind of fill in so that people aren't waiting months for heat in the winter. I don't know if that's the issue, but we need to do a better job of that if that's the case. So I don't know if that is, and I just think that we're Kent County. We do things really well around here. I want to maintain that. And I do want to know where these grants are going and how we're communicating them. And I do want to know that people are getting assistance. Thank you.
I can provide a little clarification on that. When it comes to an emergency need for heat, that is in a separate area of KCCA for emergency services, and we don't have a backlog like I described earlier for that, get your heat turned back on. I was speaking just to the weatherization specific.
Okay, anyone else? Right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion also passes. That brings us to agenda item number 16 from the Health Department. Al?
Action requested, recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve the MPHI contract for 2021-2022, accept and appropriate $10,000 to the 2021-22 Health Fund budget, and to authorize the Board Chair or County Health Officer to execute the grant agreement, approve extensions, amendments, and increases to the grant appropriation not to exceed 15% of the original award. The Health Department has been awarded $10,000 in funding from MPHI to help build the capacity to work towards state and national standards for public health and strengthen the culture of quality in Michigan's public health system. The Health Department has an ethics policy and ethics committee in accordance with the department's accreditation with Public Health Accreditation Board. With funding from MPHI, the Health Department will revise the policy to meet current accreditation requirements, develop a more inclusive and accessible policy, re-educate staff on the common language for public health ethics, and reinforce a culture that seeks guidance for complex public health situations. A manual to guide the Ethics Committee will also be developed. The Health Department will contract with a professor from GVSU who has expertise as an ethicist to develop training for staff and provide guidance in developing the ethics policy. The award period is March 1, 2022 to September 30, 2022. Assistant Corporate Counsel will review and approve all documents as to form prior to signature.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Bukowski, supported by Commissioner Womack, and we'll take questions, comments, and discussion. Commissioner Bukowski.
Yeah, might as well come on up with my question since you were so patient for this whopping $10,000 grant to make it through an hour and 20 minutes of our deliberations. The question I have is just in that first summary point where it says to build the capacity to work towards, don't we already have accreditations? And aren't we like one of the few that recognize your awesome work through that official accreditation? So is this more of a continuation as opposed to an achievement?
It's both. It's continuation. We have been accredited nationally for a couple cycles now, and we're one of the first of the few in the state of Michigan. Those standards do evolve, and especially, and I think the COVID pandemic has underscored the need to be especially mindful of ethics and values in the community and being inclusive of community voice. And so as they improve those standards, we want to make sure that we're prepared for that, and we have policies and tools and best practices in place to be inclusive of community voice, to make sure that we're being as mindful and as aware as we can be as we pursue questions that often are based on values that are difficult to navigate.
All right, and then as a small follow-up, is this state dollars? I mean, it's through the Michigan Public Health Institute, which is a private nonprofit. I saw the letter was co-signed by MDHHS.
Yes, I believe they're pass-through dollars from the Department of Health and Human Services.
All right, thank you. Thanks for your excellent work.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of passing, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. We'll go to item 17, which is Commissioner Miscellaneous. Any Commissioner Miscellaneous this morning? Commissioner Bukowski?
I feel the need to echo both Commissioner Bolter and Commissioner Antor's comment about how we get the word out there for people in need. I was surprised. I was making a presentation related to my day job before a board of trustees, and most of them had never heard of the senior millage, the trustees. So I don't know what our job is to communicate that out there, because again, our senior millage is a statement of fact, not advocacy. Our senior millage is doing awesome work for a lot of seniors throughout our county, but if people don't know to call one of the providers, they just don't know. So anything we can do to continue to get that word to every corner, because need exists in every township in spite of that per capita map. There is need in Cascade Township. I won't tell you the story now, but it is documented.
Thanks. Any other miscellaneous? I have one quick thing. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, the guidehouse contract is $163,000.
Thank you, Al.
All right. Any other miscellaneous? All right, seeing none, our next meeting is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022 at 8:30 a.m., and we are adjourned.